We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 nominations. Is it agreed that we take the 8? Agreed. Agreed. We move on now to the keynote address by the party leader, Eamon Gilmore.
Fáilte go gaile, agus gur agus na las an fáilte a chuirtó héin agus coiste dáil cheantar Lochtabre Sean Gaile roin go léir. Welcome to Galway and to what will be one of the most important conferences that the Labour Party has held in recent times. Since this time last year, when we met in conference in Mullingar, Labour has made enormous strides. We've had the most successful local and European elections in our history. Our membership continues to increase and we have an encouraging and sustained level of public support. And I want to join this evening in welcoming Dr. Jerry Cowley from Mayo, joining our councillors Keith Martin and Harry Barrett in building the organisation in Mayo. And Jerry joins the poll-topping councillor John Kelly from Roscommon, who joined the Labour Party recently. And he joins Councillor Frankie McBrearty Jr. and Councillor Martin Farron, our two new councillors in Donegal elected at the last local elections. And they join our strong team of councillors on Sligo Borough Council and Sligo County Council and the strong organisation we have in Sligo Leitrim. And they in turn join Councillor Colm Keaveney on our organisation in Galway East. And they, of course, join our strong team of city councillors here in Galway City with our President, Michael D. Higgins, showing that the Labour Party is growing here in the west of Ireland. The Labour Party is not just visiting the west of Ireland this weekend. The Labour Party is growing in the west of Ireland, and there is no greater tribute that we can pay to our President, Michael D. Higgins, and the work that he has done here in Galway down the years, that we deliver at the next general election a string of TDs for the Labour Party from Inishowen all the way to Skibbereen. Delegates, what this conference is about building on those gains. We now have a new platform on which to build a party, to bring Labour up to new levels, to break out of the old pattern of Irish politics and changing the assumptions and challenging the status quo. Our country is in the deepest economic crisis in our history, and the people of Ireland are crying out for change. We have a broken, battered, hopeless government which has long since lost the confidence of the Irish people. Our work, Labour's work, is to provide the Irish people with real change. We are not in the business of business as usual. What Labour is offering the people is the opportunity for a fundamental change in ideas, in energy, in priorities, in values, and in the way government itself is conducted. Our core messages of jobs, reform and fairness have been resonating with the Irish people, who have long since lost any sense of trust in Fianna Fáil. Again and again, it has been shown that Labour has been right on the economy. When Brian Cowan was elected Taoiseach, we warned him that the economy was in trouble, but he did nothing. We were the first to point up to the fact that the banks had stopped lending money, and Brian Cowan responded that the banks were sound. We were the only party to vote against the blanket guarantee for the banks. Our position was criticised at the time, but we have been proven to be correct, because it was that decision, that fateful decision, that has had the taxpayer on the back foot ever since. Issuing that guarantee and including Anglo-Irish Bank in it has led to one expensive policy disaster after another. Again and again, we have made the right judgment calls. We were the first party to call for temporary nationalisation of the banks. Not a popular stance at the time, but the only way to minimise the cost of the banking crisis to the taxpayer. Again, we have been proven to be correct. Now the banks are being nationalised by default, but in a way that is slower, more expensive and more damaging to the economy. We argued that the NAMA business plan was a fantasy. Brian Lenihan has now effectively admitted that we were right when he had finally to admit that the bad loans he is buying are worth far less than he originally said. What we have seen, what we have lived through, is a gross betrayal of the Irish people by Fianna Fáil, so arrogant, so intoxicated with greed that they have put the interests of the special interests before the interests of the nation. And they have refused to allow a proper inquiry into the banking crisis that Labour has demanded and that we have proposed in the Dáil. They refuse point blank to have their own actions subject to scrutiny. Let me be quite clear about this. Labour in government will insist that there is a full and comprehensive inquiry into the causes of the banking disaster, including the events of September 2008 and the decision to give a blanket guarantee to the banks, including Anglo-Irish Bank. The public has a right to know the full story of why such a catastrophic decision was taken, because we have to ensure that that mistake never happens again. And let me be clear too about how we will approach NAMA, a supposed solution that we opposed at every stage. NAMA is a hugely expensive, wasteful and bureaucratic adventure. It is a fee-fest for some of the very people who were involved in creating this mess in the first place. That is likely to contribute to ongoing paralysis of the Irish economy. When Labour gets into government, we will review the entire NAMA project. We may be bound by the legal agreements entered into by Fianna Fáil, but we will put NAMA under a microscope of transparency. There will be no sweetheart deals and there will be no safe haven for property speculators. The theme of our conference this weekend is One Ireland. It is a call to unity and to solidarity. It is a call to equality. Equality of effort now and a more equal Ireland in the future. It is an agenda for putting the needs and concerns of the Irish people back at the heart of government. And those core elements are jobs, reform and fairness. Jobs, because throughout this economic crisis, Labour has repeated and repeated again the argument that the real issue is jobs. Every extra job lost is one fewer person paying taxes and one more being supported by social welfare. Every person who finds a job is another person contributing to the exchequer and spending in the economy. I welcome the prediction of the ESRI this week that we may see some recovery in the economy next year. But what they are predicting is jobless growth, unemployment static, and 100,000 people leaving the country over the next 2 years. For the people of Ireland, recovery will only be meaningful when we start to see real jobs being created again. Labour has been to the forefront in bringing forward innovative ideas to create jobs. A strategic investment bank that will invest both in innovative companies and in the infrastructure that they need. Labour's Jobs Fund to finance initiatives that will create and sustain employment. A range of innovative ideas for training and upskilling. There will be further ideas discussed at this conference as we continue to build our platform for the next election. Reform, because this is the second time in a generation that Fianna Fáil have brought this country to the verge of bankruptcy and foisted the pain onto the backs of the young and those who can least afford it. Again, Labour has been at the forefront in demanding change. It is a year ago today that Labour published a document called Never Again, which set out 8 areas where reform was needed to strengthen our democracy and to clean up crony capitalism. Yet, when we have brought these proposals before the Dáil, Fianna Fáil has voted them down. The theme of fairness, because that is what Labour is all about. That is why we were founded, not targeting one group or another, but pulling people together so that we can all pull through. If we are to get through this crisis, then we must do so as one Ireland. And when we do, we must stay one Ireland, where there is one health system for one Ireland, where housing is not a chip in a casino game but a basic human need, where we finally live up to the aspiration of this republic that every child has an education that makes them free. That is our mission and that is our vision. And our work this weekend is to further develop our policies and our organisation to take that vision to the Irish people and to win. As we look across Europe, we see an economic crisis brought on by the failed ideology of the market dogmatists. The task that we face as European socialists is to construct an alternative vision, to campaign on it and to win. Our contribution to that task has been greatly strengthened by our success in the European election. Our colleague Princis de Rossa has been joined by Alan Kelly and Nessa Childers, and I want to thank them for the work that they have done and that they are doing. And I want to welcome here to Galway this weekend the representatives of our sister party, the SDLP. As you know, there is a crucial election taking place in the UK, including Northern Ireland. I want our SDLP colleagues to know that they have our good wishes and our support. We are grateful to Mark Durkan for his leadership and his work, and we wish his successor, Margaret Ritchie, well in hers. For all that Northern Ireland has progressed in recent years, and there has been progress, as events this week have shown, we cannot take that progress for granted. The fact remains that there is still one voice in Northern Ireland that stands now, as it has always stood, for peace and democracy and against sectarianism and division, and that is our sister party, the SDLP. British elections are always followed with great interest in this country, and this will be particularly so for this election when the outcome is expected to be close. Many people will have watched, as I did. Well, actually, I kind of half-watched it because my cable went down and I ended up having to watch it as best I could online. But I'm sure many of you watched the televised leaders' debate last night. I thought it was public service broadcasting at its best, and there will be a number of other debates between now and polling day. The leaders were given time to explain their positions on issues of interest to their electorate and to debate the differences between them. But what is particularly significant was that British broadcasters insisted on the inclusion of the leader of the Liberal Democrats and that the Labour and Tory parties agreed to it. I now want to put Irish broadcasters and Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael on notice that we will be seeking a similar three-way leaders' debate for our own general election. Depending on what poll you read, there is no more than about 12 percentage points covering the support for Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Labour. This is roughly similar to the spread covering the three main parties in the UK. Labour will be contesting the next general election here as an independent party, seeking a mandate to lead the next government. The political landscape in this country has changed. Irish politics is now a three-way race, and the Labour Party will not accept any attempt by Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael or RTE to relegate us into some sort of second division. You know, there's one aspect of the British election that amuses me, and that is that you have one political party selling the message that conservatism is a form of change. Well, in Ireland, we all know about conservatism and where it gets you. Fianna Fáil are the green Tories. They have shown the world what kind of economy you get when you combine free market ideology with a dose of good old-fashioned Gombianism. You get crony capitalism on a grand scale. You get Shawnee Fitzpatrick and a €73 billion bill for a failed banking system. You get a government that decides to guarantee the banks for 3 times our national income and refuses to allow their actions to be investigated. And despite all of their failings, still they have learned nothing. They still stick to the failed dogmas of right-wing ideology. Again and again we are told that, sure, the rich can't be asked to pay their fair share. Ireland must be the only country in the world where being wealthy means you don't have any money. Instead, it's the poor who are asked to pay. It is never the bankers or the property developers or the insiders who pay the price. It's the 250,000 people who have lost their jobs. It's the young unemployed who once again are leaving the country in droves. It's the families left behind, looking at the vacant place at the kitchen table and wondering what the future holds for the next child when they leave school. Fianna Fáil politics is beggar my neighbour politics. It is the politics of division, the politics of targeting particular groups in society to protect the interests of their wealthy friends, as though it was the young unemployed who were responsible for the jobs crisis, as though it was young families with children who made all those toxic loans, as though it was the Gardaí and the nurses and not the bankers and property developers who created the banking crisis. That approach simply won't work. First of all, because it doesn't add up. You cannot impose the full burden of Fianna Fáil's failure on one group or other in society. We have had enough of false and divided economics built on false promises from Fianna Fáil. As a country, we know that resources are going to be tight from years to come. And if someone tries to tell you that they will not increase taxes, then they're not telling the truth. Taxes are already going up. The issue is who pays them. Labour has been clear for years that the core issue in taxation is fairness, that everyone must pay their fair share, something that has been repeated time and time again by our finance spokesperson, Joan Burton. Ireland is a small country. We simply cannot afford the kind of social division that Fianna Fáil is feeding. We cannot afford the coarsening of public debate that Fianna Fáil are fanning to cover for the consequences of their own failures. We cannot afford the hands-off, leave-it-to-the-market ideology of Fianna Fáil. Labour's task is to lead change. It won't be easy. There's work to do. This conference is not about consolidation. This conference is about building further on our support, developing our thinking and our organisation, so that we return to our constituencies with the energy and the message that Labour is ready to lead. On every seat in this hall is a short booklet summarising some of the main themes of our recent policy papers. Take it home, read it, and get out on the doorsteps and campaign for it. This is a moment of great crisis, but also one of opportunity to build a better future for our country. So let us put our heads together this weekend to shape and refine our message. Let's leave here on Sunday and go back to our constituencies, our towns, our neighbourhoods, our places of work, and proudly promote Labour as the agent of change for a new Ireland, a one Ireland. Gormain Mahagan.